We're going to use a Spectre Blast against the 3 of these. We can interact. Tiny currents coil over the hulking creature in this tank, stirring the brown and silver fur on its muscular forelimbs. Curving tusks curl away from its jaw, and it is these that remind you what these creatures are called. This is a Tusk Gras. Though as far as you remember there's no such thing as a tuskless Gras. The currents speed up, whirling around the creature. Suddenly you're drawn through the eye of the whirlpool into the creature's mind. Your host and a rival pack leader tumble down a snowy cliff face, biting and clawing each other. They strike a ledge of transparent ice and roll apart, growling. Far above, their packs hoot in excitement. Cracks spiral out from their paws. Both leaders tense. The ground is over a kilometer below, but the first leader to teleport to safety will lose the duel and their pack. Your host bares his teeth. He will ensure his rival is dead to demonstrate his superiority, even if he dies too. What will you do? Now, first we'll examine. Designate Tusk Gras, nomadic creatures with a strong affinity for the Silvertide. Pack leaders demonstrate limited psychic abilities, including teleporting itself or one other once per day, but packs will only follow leaders that display not only strength, but absolute superiority. A duel between rivals, once begun, cannot be ended until one of them is either defeated or dead. What are we going to do? We'll convince our host to finish off his enemy as quickly as possible and then teleport to safety. Is that the thing? Yeah, and that's something an intellectual would try, so let's do that. Well, an intellectual with a fighting spirit, that is. Tusk Gras bounds at his rival, his blood singing with the strength of your command, and impales his rival with his tusks and tosses the body over the edge. Your host chortles to himself when suddenly the ledge snaps, falls into the abyss after his rival, teleporting himself to the top of the cliff at the last second, both packs cheering his victory. Tides swell around you, carrying you with them. After returning to your own body, a dull heat settles in your gut, and an oily haze crowds your vision. You know that the sorrow has focused its dire attention directly on you. The reminder of the sorrow fragments spill from the devices they were infesting and join the hunt. So this is good on the one side, bad on the other. We won't have to interact with these things anymore. But we can go straight for the tanks now, so that's good. Still have the Spectre with us. And is it the Spectre's turn? No, it's our turn, I think. We're going over there. They're all stunned so far. And the Spectre can move, so... And so he should. Let's move him over here, directly to the Sorrow Fragment. And hope to stop them. And we're going over here to interact if that's possible. This tank contains 2 crystal shards in a sparkling liquid. Memory stirs, pushing aside thoughts of pursuing beasts. You remember climbing a floating mountain of shining rock. Living crystalline formations wandered the wastes far below, their many legs tracing intricate patterns in the glittering sand. This being is one of those, a Quamis. Its body is in liquid form, however. The shards, its heart and brain, begin vibrating together, filling your vision with what it sees. You sink into the simple sea-like mind of the Quamis as it roams through the jagged wastes, feeling its raw and aching need to create and recreate. It moves by birthing new legs from the death of old ones. It traces glorious halls in the glittering sand before erasing them with even more complicated designs than chaos. A hunter's ballistic slug mashes through its brain, thoughts becoming splinters, melting. You feel its dying wish to etch one last design on the sand beneath it. What will you do? We'll examine it first. Designate Quamis, living crystalline formations with a strong affinity for the red tide. These beings can shift between liquid and solid states seemingly at whim. They move over their native soil by constantly creating and destroying their bodies and leave complex, spine-edged patterns in their wake. What will we do? We're dying. We'll study the hunter and try to understand him. That's what we would do, as we're dying anyways, so we will understand one last thing. The creature reluctantly turns its fading attention from the unmarked sand beneath it and draws ambient light through itself to focus on the being above. The Quamis cannot make sense of what it sees, but you can. He's a blister-riddled human, coughing wetly into his sleeve as he digs for the Quamis' valuable heart. The hunter who killed your host is dying himself. With a heart, perhaps he hopes to purchase a cure. You feel yourself melting into the channels carved by the tides. You lean against the tank to catch your breath, eyeing the remaining creatures in the tanks. You'll need to be swift to avoid the sorrow fragments hunting for you. Oh, poor Spectre, friend. Oh man. Oh man. So what should a Spectre do? Ideally, he should do something against these 3 with his blast, and he'll move over here to do so. And what are we going to do? We're going to interact with this thing. Hope we survive. The radiant humanoid within this tank, a fire white, your memory whispers, stands carved deep in a pool of water, motionless. As near as you can tell, it is unconscious, but its eyes, slivers of even brighter light, are barely visible. They pulse once, and its mind unfurls before you like a cloud of flame, momentarily carrying you from the chamber and the creatures pursuing you. 2 gaunt, dehydrated firewhites trudge under an ember-flecked sky, across a charred plain studded with the towering bones of monsters. In the shadow of a mountainous ribcage, the leading white stumbles to its knees, arm tendrils deliriously seeking water in the ash and dust. The other white, your host, is only slightly stronger, and wishes to give its power and life to the other. so that it can reach the river a kilometer away. We will examine the Firewhite. Designate Firewhite, humanoid beings composed of light with a strong affinity for the gold tide. They are so different from organic creatures that they do not recognize us as life forms. Among their own kind they give freely. A dying white will receive the last drops of water which they catalyze for energy from a healthier one, even if it puts the giver in danger. Well, what can we do? We will inspire the White to study its situation and environment for an alternative solution, as we're intellectual and a thinking White. An unfamiliar desire flickers into life in the White's mind. Curiosity, it kneels, sending flaming tendrils into the ashen soil, searching for something, anything that will save its companion and itself if that's possible. And there, far below the surface, ancient creatures sleep. Without a thought, the Firewhite takes their life and restores itself and its companion. The two rise together and set off across the plain. Heat envelops you, aligning you to the tides. This was the last of the creatures. You steel yourself for the deadly race to the tank at the back of the room. That's it. See those tanks at the top of the platform? Get to the glowing one, quick. So what should the Spectre do? I think he'll move this way. And then he'll blast this thing. We'll just hope we can reach this glowing tank. This thing is stunned, so we should have some time. Scintillating color writhes along the facets of the crystalline chamber. It seems ready for you to enter. But we don't have an action, so turn your attention back to the sorrow fragments. Ha ha ha. Spectre is flanked, but he still has his blast, which we're going to use now. Now we're going to interact with this thing. The tank continues flowing with a brilliant, colorful energy. A low hum reverberating in your mind draws you to it. Place your hand on the surface of the tank. As soon as your hand touches the glass, a surge of energy flows into your body. The power from each of the 5 tidal creatures and the choices you made. As hard as you try, you cannot contain the massive wave of power. I'm going to let the power flow. Burst of force surges through your arm, into your head and out. The fragments of the sorrow screech in pain, fleeing the laboratory in every direction.